Next up is a commercial to residential conversion project pitched by Resham Sira on Property Elevator, the hit Sky TV show, which is a bit like Dragon's Den for property entrepreneurs who come along and pitch their property projects for funding. Resham is looking for £1.45 million worth of funding for a site in East London, which has a William Hill on the ground floor, vacant commercial space on the upper parts. He's looking to build a number of flats, raise 1.45 million quid, and make a lot of money out of it. So what you're about to see is the show as it went out on Sky TV. I'll stop the action every now and then and chip in with some analysis. Watch and learn, because not everything that is commercial is necessarily the right property to convert to residential use. So you learn plenty from this video, so stay tuned. Handing over now to Elizabeth Warburton, the show's presenter, who meets up with the Pictcher, Resham.
Resham, welcome to Property Elevator.
Thank you.
Where have you travelled from today?
I've come from East London today, so not too far. It's been a good journey.
Good, good. And tell us a little bit about your property experience.
So I've done a little bit of residential property in the past, purchased from auction and from the open market.
Okay.
So I've built up a small buy-to-let portfolio.
Yep.
And just looking to take it to the next step, and which is why I'm here today.
Great. So what's the deal you've brought today
So
then?
the deal is a commercial to residential conversion.
Nice.
It's based in East London, Plaistow, and it consists of the commercial on the ground floor and office uppers.
And how much are you after today?
So I'm after 1.45 million
Yep.
from the Angels, and looking to have a final GDV of around about 2.1 million.
Brilliant. So a nice margin in there.
Yeah, I hope so.
Resham's coming in next. East London, I think.
Within the M25?
Within the M25. Qualifies for you, Ranjan, if no one else.
And I'm doing a deal there at the moment, actually, so.
That's interesting. So maybe some competition for this one. Shall we get him in and see what he has to say?
Yes.
Resham, thank you very much for coming in today. It's a pleasure to meet you. Can you tell us who you are and all about the deal, please?
Thanks, John. So I'm looking for funding of £1.45 million. It's for a commercial to residential conversion in Plaistow, East London. So the deal consists of 2 commercial units on the ground floor and vacant office space on the uppers. We've got the left-hand side, which is currently tenanted by William Hill, and that's on a lease until January of 2024. And we've got the vacant right-hand side, which was previously let to a bank. What I'm proposing to do is, under the Class MAPD rights, convert the uppers into office space. So meeting the minimum standards of 37 square metres, and also using the rear part of the ground floor commercial unit that's vacant. Anticipate we can get 8 apartments in that space, and will give us a total GDV of 2.1 million.
And can you just go into the total GDV? Because I wasn't entirely clear how you'd worked that out. You've got the 220 for the 8 apartments, that gets you to 1.76. And then the retail units, you've got figures times 10. Can you explain that to me?
So the annual rent of the unit that's let to William Hill, that's £22,000 per annum. So I've multiplied that by 10 to give its commercial valuation. So we've got 220k for that unit.
10% return.
10% return.
Yep.
And for
Sensible.
the vacant unit, because I anticipate using some of the back space for another single apartment, I've spoken to agents, and because of the lower square footage, they anticipate an annual rent of £14,000. Which takes me to the valuation of £140,000.
Okay.
But your plan is to keep all of this?
So one of the options is to keep the whole lot. The other option is to sell.
So you've got the purchase price at £970,000. Where are you up to in that process? Is it just on the open market? Are you well progressed? Is the offer accepted? Where are you up to?
So the offer hasn't been accepted. It's on the open market. I actually saw the property last week, and the first round of offers closed Friday just gone. So the agents first mentioned a price of between 8 and 850k, and then a week later they mentioned a figure closer to £1 million. So I'm not sure whether it's the amount of interest they've got or whether they're trying to push for a higher figure. So I've actually,
both probably.
Yeah, so I've actually gone in with an offer of 930, although I've written a figure of 970 in the pack, because I'm not quite sure where this may end up.
No, well, that's very sensible.
And do you know at what price the deal doesn't work anymore?
Presume if it goes over, say, 1.1 million, it's probably not worth it.
You're looking to build how many apartments?
8 apartments.
And those are all on the first and second floors, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
4 apartments per
There's
floor.
actually a central courtyard in between, so the shape of the building doesn't match what you would think from the outside. So the upper floor, above one of the commercial units that's vacant, there's 2 floors. Above the William Hill, there's only 1 floor.
Right.
So on the second floor, there's actually less space, so there'll be 2 apartments maximum on the second floor. There'll be 5 on the first floor and 1 on the ground floor at the back of the retail unit.
Have you actually done a block plan of roughly how those apartments will be laid out? The reason I'm asking is because it seems like a very deep building, and then you've got light issues because all rooms have to have natural light for habitable rooms.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering about the depth of that floor plate, whether you know you're going to get that many apartments there.
I don't know for certain, but I've requested an actual floor plan with measurements from the agent, and he's pushing the vendor to actually produce that. So my offer that I did put forward was subject to having the floor plan and the correct measurements.
Good.
But there's also, with the courtyard inside, there's also windows that look into the courtyard.
Yes.
Although it's probably not the most desirable for those apartments, we still have enough natural light so that we can utilise the space.
You're saying about 50,000 an apartment, so based off 37 square metres, that's about £150 per square foot. Is that what you've estimated it to be?
A builder was on a
125.
video call.
Yeah, you calculated pretty better than my head. So
Yeah, it's 125.
it was a 125.
Yeah.
So yeah, sort of even lower then. Talk
Yeah.
to me about that, because how you come to that figure.
Yeah, so I had a builder on a video call.
Okay.
Who took around the place, and he estimated at roughly £40,000 to £45,000 per apartment. And so I added on a 10% contingency to that to arrive at the figure of £50,000 per apartment.
Okay.
I don't think that's unreasonable with what you've done. I mean, it's so difficult at the moment because, you know, costs are going up. It wasn't that long ago when it was £100 a foot to convert an apartment, you know, certainly outside London. I've just finished 2 in Kingston, and we were so a little bit historic because it was, you know, it's taken 9 months to do, and that was about £135 a foot. So I think probably, depending in London, maybe 150 is a bit more realistic. Maybe it's so difficult until you get a full schedule of works, which is what you have to do on every development, a full schedule of works, so the builders can are all competing on the same basis. It's very hard. It is hard to estimate, especially at the moment.
Okay, a quick bit of commentary on estimating building works. The problem with this building, I guess, is that it's an old building. And when you are doing building works, converting a former commercial building to residential flats, there are a number of different elements of cost which vary depending on the building that you are working with. So if you are working on a building, well, it'll need a certain amount of repairs. So some buildings are in really good nick and they don't need so much repairs. Some buildings will need the roof fixing or redoing, windows redoing and all of that. So first of all, you've got to look at the existing building, the fabric of the existing building, and what element of repairs are required. Then you have to look at, well, what do you have to do to get a clear open floor plate? Because a lot of older buildings, Victorian buildings in particular, would have chimney breasts in the wrong place and load-bearing walls in the wrong place. And you may have to remove those and put steels in. Whereas if you've got a newer building, you tend to have larger open plan areas where you don't need to do so many ripping out of chimney breasts or putting up load-bearing walls. So those areas of cost differ depending on the building type that you're looking at. And then there's the element of cost to do with the actual conversion itself. And that can vary depending on things like site access issues. So if you're on a busy main road, for example, it would be very difficult to put a skip outside. It would be very difficult to bring in materials, and that can add further to the cost of doing works in that particular location. So it's very, very difficult to come up with a cost per square foot when you're doing residential conversions. And as John says in that little clip there, it's very, very important to have that schedule of works. But for now, I mean, you've got to have a stab at something when coming up with some initial costs. And what is come up with there, 45K a flat, for those sort of for that sort of area, for that sort of building, is in the right ballpark. One of the nice benefits of doing premises above retail and developments like this.
Are there any?
Oh, there's plenty.
Really?
Unlike doing new builds and all of that, you've got a cash flow from day one because you've got a tenant in there paying something.
Well,
so that can be handy, and it's not a bad thing because it's very rare to have a development project unless you're doing shops and uppers where you got cash flow from day one.
yeah, that's true. That's true. The one thing I would say, I've had, you've got William Hill on the ground floor, and I had a William Hill in Buxton in Derbyshire, and I decided to sell, and I'm glad I did because they moved out 2.5 years later.
You didn't think they were a fair bet?
Very good, very good. In the fact, no, I didn't think they were a fair bet at the time, actually, Ranjan. I was, although they'd refurbished it, I was worried about the market's changing, you know, for betting shops, and it's all going online, isn't it? So be careful of that. It's great that you got them there for 2 years, but I think you have to assume they won't be there after that.
If you stick in contingency and you add in
10%,
extra
yeah.
for the professional fees, I think you're looking more at a 1.7-ish total cost.
Yeah.
So you're then at a return on cost of 35-ish.
35 what?
%.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It's not as good as 46 where you started out.
No, but realistically, you know, we're here to help and to advise as well, as much as we are to help fund a deal. And if you end up 30%, I think that's good. So I won't worry too much about that.
And of course, are we missing a little bit of a trick here that you put it in the proposal, the airspace rights. I mean, if you can get this extra floor, this dramatically changes your numbers, doesn't it?
It does.
These are the worst case scenario numbers anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
How are you
let's
proposing
not forget
to implement the airspace rights?
So if you have a look at the images above the William Hill shop, there's a first floor where the windows are.
Yeah.
And then there's the brickwork, which is on the second floor. So behind that is actually just empty space.
Yeah.
So although it wouldn't be covered under the PD rights, it would require planning. We could actually apply for planning permission to build in that space and actually even a further floor above. So that will give us potentially an extra 4,500 square foot worth of, residential space.
Do you have funds available yourself?
Now, I don't get excited when people start talking about planning and you could do this and you could do that. Well, you could build the whole Eiffel Tower on top of the thing. But the point is that's subject to planning permission and it's completely uncertain. The way I like to look at these sort of projects is on the basis of permitted development rights alone. So what can you do without the council being able to put their oar in at all? And that's under permitted development. If the deal stacks just based on that alone, great, it's a doer. The other things that you could possibly do are a bit like the William Hill on the ground floor, a bet. You might be a good bet, might not be a bad bet at all, but it's a bet nonetheless, and it's uncertain. And you can't really factor in uncertainty at the same level as risk as certainty, which you get from permitted development.
Of that sort of thing.
£200,000.
Always good to have skin in the game. We like that.
Well, I'll start, if I may.
Okay.
I like you.
Thank you.
I think you're investable. You're very bright, articulate. If you put in your 200,000, into the project, I'll put in the balance of the capital that is required to purchase and develop it after the bank have said what they'll do. I'll personally guarantee it. And on that basis, I'd go 50-50 with you on the deal. That's subject to us buying for around £1 million. So that's a firm offer from me.
For this, there's not enough granularity and clarity in the numbers, so that makes me uncomfortable. So I'm not in for this one, but wish you luck.
Kind of just going along with Helen. Helen's a very smart lady. She said it's more likely 1.7 million, so I tend to agree with her. When you bring the total cost to 1.7 million, assuming you get that purchase price, which you may not, it might be higher, and then you talk about, so let's say you put in the 200 grand, I'd probably need to put in about another 400 after the finance. The finance is going to cost at least 100, probably more like 150. So the return on cash is only about 30 to 40%, which I think any sensible investment is 100% return on cash. So it's just not good enough on the money that's going into it.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I actually think it's going to be a challenge to get the number of flats that you're first proposing, simply because of the floor plate layout. So that for that reason, I'm not sure whether it's one for me.
It sort of looks like a good deal on the face of it. You know, it's quite hard to find sites at the moment. It's a conversion, it's under PD. It's in a reasonably good area in terms of it's London, you know, it's East London, it's up and coming. It's got some good capital growth potential. I think you know where I'm going with it. At this stage, what you presented, it's too high risk, and I don't think it will stand.
So you've got one offer. I wouldn't listen to these all the negativity in the room because
Reality.
No, I'll tell you what the reality is, Nicholas. I've got a lot more experience in dealing with this sort of thing than you have, and you've got more experience in other areas. I accept that, but I believe, especially if we get the air rights, which I have a sneaky feeling we might on this, we'll make plenty of money if we can buy it for the right price, and I'll be delighted to work with you. So the choice is yours. You've got one choice or no choice. So you can walk away here find someone else to work with, or you can accept my offer.
John, I'd like to accept your offer.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Cheers, John.
I said, don't listen to the negativity.
I'm not exactly sure about that deal. I think there are a couple of red flags for me. The main thing here is that I think John has been a bit optimistic on the airspace rights. Although it's PD, the PD rules for airspace rights give councils and local authorities a lot more power to stick their oar in based on whether they think it's appropriate or not. Whereas with traditional permitted development, the council has very, very little room for manoeuvre. In fact, they have no room for manoeuvre. The criteria are strictly laid out. And the great thing about traditional PD, what I'm talking about is Class MA conversions and Class G conversions. As long as you know and you educate yourself what those criteria are, you can almost pre-assess whether or not you're going to get planning permission, whether or not you're going to get PD, based on pre-assessing your deal against that checklist of criteria. So you know before you buy a place whether you're going to get it or not. Planning permission and airspace rights is not like that. It's completely uncertain. Of course, you need to get educated, and the place to get educated is my 8-week commercial property training program, where I teach you how to exploit these permitted development rights to do property development with certainty and profitability. Now, the other issue with this deal was, of course, the floor plate that I alluded to several times. Now, we didn't quite have a clear, accurate floor plan at the time, but it was obvious that the building was rather deep. Now, the problem with deep floor plates is that windows aren't exactly in the right place, and therefore you will not be able to get flats with adequate natural light to all the habitable rooms. The other issue is that we have minimum space standards right now. So although the plan was to create 37 square metre 1-bedroom flats, which is the minimum space requirement for those, the floor plate, the floor space on each floor doesn't really facilitate that. For example, if one floor is 60 square metres, it is too big for a 1-bedroom flat, but it's too small for a 2-bedroom flat. So what a lot of people do is they just take the floor space in the building, the square foot of the building, and divide it by 37 square metres, and then assume that's the amount of floor, that's the number of flats that you'll get out of it. Well, that's not always the case, because you need to have some space for hallways, stairs and landings. The floor plate has got to divide nicely into those sort of 1-bedroom type of unit type layouts, and you've got to have natural light all over the place. Otherwise, what you end up with is fewer flats than you first thought that you would get. And that's basically one of the big problems with this particular deal.
Honestly, don't know what's wrong with you lot today.
I think you've got a pig in a poke.
Well, I think it's going. You're down the betting shop, John, on that top floor, aren't you?
Honestly, don't know what is wrong with you lot today. For me, that's nearly the perfect deal. And I'd do deals like that every day of the week if I could find them.
Well, you know what you say.
And he's putting in 200,000 of his own money, which I love because it shows commitment, and he is very investable.
You know what they say, if you do a deal with the bookie, it's the bookie that wins.
The bookie's moving out in 2 years.
So, how'd you get on?
Yeah, really well. It's quite nerve-wracking in there.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good advice from the angels,
Good.
and ended up getting one offer from John,
Brilliant.
which is amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So what are the next steps for you?
So next step is to finalise the offer on the property. Fingers crossed we get it for the right price,
Yeah.
and just get a few more builders quotes and move on from there.
High streets across the land are changing forever. Basically, there's an oversupply of retail premises. Shops are closing down, more are going to close down in the future. The government know this, and that's why they're introducing a light touch planning system which allows small developers to easily repurpose these buildings to residential use under a light touch planning regime called permitted development. Now, this is going to be the biggest revolution and the biggest change and the biggest opportunity for property investors that I've ever seen. And this is all coming into effect on 1st of August. So you need to know what's happening and what properties to look for to take advantage of these opportunities so that you can get in there and take that first mover advantage. I've got a 90-minute free masterclass to get you ready for August the 1st. Make sure you join me, click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or expert, we'll get you started.